By September 1781, the American Revolutionary War had been raging for 6 years. During these years, the conflict saw many key developments, from the Declaration of Independence to the vital French alliance. By 1780, British strategy shifted to the southern colonies, with forces capturing Charleston. General Cornwallis had conducted a campaign through the southern colonies before moving his British forces to Yorktown, Virginia. After the capture of Charleston, Cornwallis moved through North Carolina and eventually established a base at Yorktown on the York River. Cornwallis chose Yorktown for its strategic position, establishing it as a defensive position and supply base. The British forces expected naval support to arrive from New York, which would reinforce their position. General Washington and his French allies, led by the Comte de Rochambeau, recognized this as an opportunity to trap Cornwallis by land and sea. This strategic situation set the stage for what would become the decisive battle of the American Revolutionary War. In the summer of 1781, General George Washington and the Comte de Rochambeau executed one of the most brilliant maneuvers of the Revolutionary War. Their armies, stationed near New York, embarked on a rapid march southward toward Virginia, where British General Cornwallis had established a base at Yorktown. This movement, beginning on August 14th, was coordinated with the French fleet under Admiral de Grasse, which arrived in the Chesapeake Bay by August 30th. By September 14th, Washington arrived in Williamsburg, just north of Yorktown. The Allied forces, totaling approximately 17,000 troops, prepared to encircle Cornwallis's position. Cornwallis found himself in an increasingly desperate position, with only 8,700 troops. Behind him was the York River, while the French fleet blocked any potential escape by sea. By September 28th, the Allied forces had completely surrounded Yorktown. Cornwallis was trapped with the York River behind him, the French fleet blocking escape by sea, and a superior Franco-American force encircling him by land. The march to Yorktown represents a brilliant feat of logistics and deception. The Allied forces moved with remarkable speed, covering over 400 miles in just 36 days. Throughout the operation, Washington actively deceived British intelligence about his true intentions, making them believe he still planned to attack New York. With Cornwallis now completely trapped, the stage was set for the siege operations that would ultimately lead to British surrender. On October 9, 1781, the Allied forces began a devastating artillery bombardment of British positions at Yorktown. The bombardment unleashed approximately 100 heavy guns against the British defenses, delivering a relentless barrage that continued day and night. The American artillery was under the command of General Henry Knox, while the French contributed their powerful siege guns to the effort. The Allies maintained continuous fire, with cannonballs raining down on British positions. The bombardment was methodical and intense, giving the British defenders little respite. The bombardment proved devastating. Many British cannons were destroyed, and the continuous shelling caused significant casualties. Lord Cornwallis was even forced to move his headquarters when it was hit by Allied fire. As one Continental Army officer noted, the fire continued for several days without intermission. British morale began to deteriorate under the constant shelling, setting the stage for the next phase of the siege. By October 11, 1781, the Allied forces had established their first parallel and were ready to advance the siege of Yorktown. The Allies began constructing their second parallel trench, just 300 yards from the British lines. Two key British redoubts, small fortified positions, stood in the way of completing this second parallel. On October 14th, the Allies planned a coordinated night assault to capture these redoubts. The American forces were led by Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Hamilton, who requested the honor of leading the assault on Redoubt 10. At 8 o'clock in the evening, both assault columns moved forward in darkness. The Americans under Hamilton advanced toward Redoubt 10, while the French forces attacked Redoubt 9. In a daring bayonet charge, Hamilton's men quickly overwhelmed the British defenders of Redoubt 10, taking just 10 minutes to secure their objective. The French forces met stronger resistance at Redoubt 9, but also prevailed, capturing it shortly afterward. With both redoubts secured, the Allies could now complete their second parallel, placing their artillery just 300 yards from the British defenses. The successful capture of these redoubts and completion of the second parallel effectively tightened the noose around Cornwallis. The British position at Yorktown was rapidly becoming untenable. As the siege advanced, Lord Cornwallis's position in Yorktown grew increasingly desperate. With the Allied second parallel nearly complete and situated just 300 yards from British lines, Cornwallis faced a critical situation. Cornwallis's army faced dire circumstances. Supplies were dwindling, casualties mounting, and there was no sign of Clinton's relief force from New York. On the night of October 16th, Cornwallis ordered a desperate sortie against the Allied siege lines. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Abercrombie led approximately 350 British troops in a surprise attack against the French positions. The British temporarily succeeded in capturing several cannons in the French section of the parallel and tried to disable them by spiking, driving nails into the touch holes. The success was short-lived. Allied forces quickly rallied and drove the British back into their fortifications. After the failed sortie, Cornwallis conceived a desperate plan to evacuate his army across the York River to Gloucester Point. The first wave of troops began to cross on the night of October 16th, but nature intervened. A violent storm with heavy rain and strong winds scattered the British boats and made further crossings impossible. By the morning of October 17th, Cornwallis faced the inevitable reality of defeat. The British situation was dire. Almost half of Cornwallis's troops were sick or wounded. The fortifications were severely damaged. There was no path of escape, and relief from Clinton would not arrive in time. At 10 o'clock on the morning of October 17th, Cornwallis sent a letter to General Washington proposing negotiations for surrender. The British counterattacks had failed, and the stage was now set for formal surrender. On October 17, 1781, after enduring 19 days of relentless siege, the British defenses were on the verge of collapse. A British drummer appeared on the parapet, beating a drum call for parley. This universal signal indicated the British desire to negotiate. General Cornwallis then sent a letter to General Washington requesting terms of surrender, acknowledging the hopelessness of his position. Washington's terms were strict but honorable. The British troops would become prisoners of war. All arms and military supplies were to be surrendered. Naval forces would be handed over to the French. As a courtesy, officers would be allowed to keep their sidearms. On October 19, 1781, the formal surrender ceremony took place. The defeated British troops marched out of their fortifications in formation with their colors cased, their flags furled in acknowledging defeat. The British band reportedly played a tune called "The World Turned Upside Down," a fitting melody that captured the shocking reversal of fortunes for the once mighty British Army. Notably, General Cornwallis himself claimed illness and did not attend the surrender ceremony, a move widely interpreted as avoiding the humiliation of personal surrender. In his place, Cornwallis sent General Charles O'Hara, his second-in-command, to surrender his sword. O'Hara initially approached the French commander, Comte de Rochambeau, but was directed to General Washington, who designated his own second-in-command, General Benjamin Lincoln, to receive the sword. This surrender of over 7,000 British troops effectively ended major military operations in the American Revolution, though the formal peace treaty would not be signed until 1783.
The impact and legacy of Yorktown. News of the British surrender at Yorktown reached London in late November 1781. The news shocked the British government and public alike, who had not anticipated such a devastating defeat. Upon hearing the news, Prime Minister Lord North reportedly exclaimed, "The defeat at Yorktown led to a political crisis in Britain. After 12 years in power, Lord North's government collapsed in March 1782. By April 1782, peace negotiations had begun in Paris between British and American diplomats. These negotiations culminated in the Treaty of Paris, signed in September 1783, which formally recognized American independence. Yorktown stands as the crowning military achievement of the Revolutionary War. It demonstrated the effectiveness of the Franco-American alliance and secured America's place as an independent nation. The victory at Yorktown effectively ended major combat operations and changed the course of world history, giving birth to a new nation that would grow to become a global power.